As a way of centering us for our time today, I want to read from you the first 6 verses of Psalm 71. I've taken refuge in you, Lord. Don't let me ever be put to shame. Deliver me and rescue me by your righteousness. Bend your ear toward me and save me. Be my rock of refuge where I can always escape. You commanded that my life be saved because you are my rock and my fortress. My God, rescue me from the power of the wicked. Rescue me from the grips of the wrongdoer and the oppressor, because you are my hope, Lord. You, Lord, are the one I trusted since my childhood. I've depended on you from birth. You cut the cord when I came from my mother's womb. My praise is always about you. Amen. Hi, I want to welcome you to Hobson UMC on YouTube. I am VH Sonny Dixon Jr. I am the lead pastor here at Hobson, and I am in for my weekly conversation with my son, Trey, as I talk with him and share with him the upcoming lectionary passage for this coming week. We are in the fourth Sunday after Epiphany. And it is an opportunity for me to kind of work through and trying to get me focused toward what the message might be for this weekend. And it's also just an opportunity for us to touch bases, to hear what's going on with him. It kind of serves as a time we used to get together as a congregation on Wednesday nights and have an opportunity to share in prayer and discussion, and so that I could get some kind of sense of where the congregation was as I moved toward the end of the week. And now Trey gets to serve as a surrogate for the entire congregation. So we are delighted that you have chosen to spend some time with us. It always means something to us when we hear from you and you share that there was something that we said that at a moment that you needed comfort, brought you comfort, or something that might have challenged you. And for some of you who assert that we sound alike, it gives you an opportunity to figure out which one of us is talking. So, but we're thankful for your support and for your spending some time. We know that there are a lot of options that are out there for you, and so we truly appreciate it. And we also want to take this opportunity to thank those of you who support the ministry here at Hobson with your financial gifts, and in particular those of whom are not connected formally with the congregation, but have become connected to the congregation through listening on these YouTube recordings. So once again, I just want to thank you for tuning in and pray that all is well with you. Whenever we gather at Hobson, it is an important time for us to share with one another those things that are upon our hearts that we carry to God. Sometimes they are the things of which we come and we celebrate, and we know that God has blessed us in ways that we did not deserve. And then there are other times that there are challenges and circumstances and situations that we're facing where we know that we're going to need God's help in the midst of it. And because we believe that it's important for us to be in prayer for one another, that we share in these moments. It is an important part of our ministry. It's an important part of what we believe holds us together as a community. As over the years, what has really been something that we truly value in this time is the celebration of birthdays. And I can go back and remember when there were young people who would look forward to their birthdays, and sometimes they would raise their hand and say, my birthday's coming up, and their birthday might be 2 or 3 months away, but they wanted to be a part of the celebration. And so This week, we want to lift up some special birthdays. Number one on the list is Pam Hicks's mother, Jane Hicks. We will be celebrating a birthday this week. We remember Kimberly Miller, who as a child grew up in this church, dear friend Jewel Walker, Regina Faye Martin, Faye Fuller, has a birthday this week. Baylor Bone's birthday, and Cabra Tyus, Thomas Hunter Sr. This will be Thomas's first birthday after having pledged Phi Beta Sigma. So not only is he my power forward, he is now my brother. And we wish him a happy birthday. Tom Gildermaster, Beth Page Thompson, Heather Wood, who visits with us from time to time, Mike Stewart, Elizabeth Williams, Bianca Montgomery, Ed Grimes, Minister Ed Grimes out at South Inglewood, and his pastor also, Napoleon Harris, have birthdays this week. Trey Collier, Martha Wetterman, Neil Darby, Gail Kinzer, James Thrillkill, Brandon Mason, Wayman Buggs, and Sydney Rogers Cowan, and Stacia Bradford. If you know these people, I encourage you to send them a shout out this week and wish them happy birthday, as we will be singing to them this weekend. Also want to ask for prayers for comfort for Sophia Brown Crawford in the death of her father. Ask for prayers for Rosalind Robinson. Her husband passed this week, and we're praying for her. And also the family of Mary Parks. Her nieces, several of her nieces are dear friends of mine, and so we want to pray for that family. I ask that you pray for Mary Summers, who is caring for her husband, and then prayers for Beatrice Fuller and Faye Fuller, whom I just asked you to be in prayer for birthday. Both of them are in the hospital, and so we ask for prayers for them, and prayers for Greg Reynolds, who recently had 3 stents put in, and we ask for prayers for them. And then a prayer of celebration for Lawana Coleman Johnson, who has been looking for a new position with the Metro Police Department, and she got that position this past week, and so we want to lift up and give thanks for that. As I said, prayers are very important to us, and if there are prayers, celebrations, or concerns that you want me to be in prayer, I want us to be in prayer, I ask that you please let me know. You can send them to me via Facebook, you can text me, you can email me, you can call me, however it is. Just make sure, because we believe that is an important part of the ministry, and it is a way that it keeps us connected to one another and to God. Our reading for this week comes from Luke's Gospel, the 4th chapter, and I'll be reading verses 21 through 30, and I'll be using the Common English Bible translation. It is a continuation from last week's passage. Jesus began to explain to them, "Today this scripture has been fulfilled just as you heard it." Everyone was raving about Jesus. So impressed were they by the gracious words flowing from his lips, they said, "This is Joseph's son, isn't it?" Then Jesus said to them, "Undoubtedly, you will quote this saying to me, 'Doctor, heal yourself. Do here in your hometown what we've heard you did in Capernaum.'" He said, "I assure you that no prophet is welcome in the prophet's hometown. And I can assure you that there were many widows in Israel during Elijah's time, when it didn't rain for 3.5 years, and there was a great food shortage in the land. Yet Elijah was sent to none of them, but only to a widow in the city of Zarephath, in the region of Sidon. There were also many persons with skin disease in Israel during the time of the prophet Elijah, but none of them were cleansed. Instead, Naaman the Syrian was cleansed. When they heard this, everyone in the synagogue was filled with anger. They rose up and ran him out of town. They led him to the crest of the hill on which the town had been built, so they could throw him off the cliff. But he passed through the crowd and went on his way. This is the word of God for the people of God. Thanks be to God. Trey, as I said in the introduction, this is a continuation of the last week. We read the first part of this, and I have, as I say, for the last couple of weeks or so, I have been really going over this passage and reading it. It is one of the stories that I do enjoy. Though I have over the years, taken and look at it from different perspectives of reading it and certain things that stood out to me, and so this week, as I've been reading it, there were three things that kind of stood out to me a little different than in the past. But just so that, in case somebody didn't hear last week, this is a part of what many have said was Jesus' first sermon. He has been around. He has been in Capernaum, and he's been other places, and he has returned back to his hometown of Nazareth. And he is in the synagogue. He has read a scripture of which comes from Isaiah that he then tells the people that on this day, in hearing it, that this scripture has been fulfilled just as you heard it on this day. And so we hear this, and on this first sermon, there's some of whom say it's kind of a mission statement, and Luke lets us know that there was great excitement around what he initially says. And while there was excitement around it, it did not take long before the message, and as people are hearing the message, began to have some debate about it. And then ultimately, as we heard in the end of it, they want to kill him for it. And so as I've read it this week, and as I've been praying and meditating on it, one of the first things that kind of stood out to me this time is that while they said that they were impressed with his words, there were some who said, "This is Joseph's son, isn't it?" And it just reminds me and reminds just how difficult sometimes it is for us to go home. That even though he spoke with eloquence, as I like to believe, I mean, he doesn't tell us that, but I think he spoke with great eloquence and had great insight on that. But there were those of whom just as they were listening to that could not get beyond who they knew Jesus to be, of whom they had grown up and seen him in the community, even though he's probably been gone now from Nazareth for a time, at least for probably a year or so, and he's come back. They still cannot let go of who it was that they thought that he should be, and how they could and would relate to him in those circumstances. I don't believe that when they said that this is Joseph's son, that they spoke it from the thing, oh wow, look, he's following in his father's footsteps, as we might look for one of a child of privilege. But in this particular case, in just saying that this is Joseph's son, they brought up all of the stories that had been a part of the community of him growing up, of where there have been those who have questioned, just whether or not he was Joseph's son or not. But this year, one of the things I want to add to that, and in particular as Jesus is talking to them, I believe as he shared around this passage, I think he was talking to them about setting things right, about doing the right things, of putting things in order. Normally when we hear that message and we look at it, we like to think of it from the standpoint as he's talking about the oppressed and people who are in prison and setting them free and people who are blind, is that we often see ourselves in this story that Jesus has come to deal with our issues, those things of where we have been oppressed, the things of where we have not been able to see, that we are the ones of whom we believe that Jesus comes to speak the good news to. But seldom do we look at it from the standpoint that while there are always two sides of that message of where we're speaking of helping people up, it also is a time of addressing those of whom have put people down. And what does it mean for us as a community, and how we are as a community are supposed to respond to the needs within our own community, and how we are to help one another, and ultimately, as Jesus goes and tells us later, to love one another and to care for one another and to treat our neighbors as ourselves. We don't start out from that standpoint. We don't look at it, and I think that in this particular time, that when he was there on that Sabbath, and when he was there sharing with them in the synagogue, that he was talking to them about, and he knew some of the people who had been doing some things that caused others within the community to suffer. He knew the people who were in the community that had falsely imprisoned folk. He knew all of the stories. And so as he is talking about and talking to them, then they raise up, because I believe at this point in time that Joseph has died. That here Jesus is coming back, and Jesus is talking about dealing with the right things within the community, and yet they are pointing out that Jesus hasn't come back to take over Joseph's business. He hasn't been, he's been wandering around for a while, and instead of coming in and taking care of his mother and accepting the responsibilities that the older son ought to be doing, that he has not come back in and has fit within the system and with the societal structures, in particular the structures of oppression that was there. He was back challenging them. And so when they say, "Isn't this Joseph's son?" How dare he come and tell us what it is that we're supposed to be doing when he himself has not done the very things that he is telling us to do in that passage. I see that in that, in particular, when Jesus then responds to them, that undoubtedly you will quote to me, "Physician, heal thyself." In other words, before you start telling us what we need to do, you need to take care of your own business, Jesus, in that point. And so, I look at that from the standpoint that when Jesus does come to us, that it is so easy for us that when we are going through something, when we are those of whom have been victimized by the systems and those of whom have been oppressed by the system, when we hear Jesus' word of setting us free from that. But I do think in this day and time, in particular within our own community and where we're seeing that the great disparity that exists within our community that causes people to suffer, that there are sometimes those of us who are in the churches who are responsible for that. As I say, as I was listening to the story and I was going back and I was thinking of an experience that happened to me many years ago in the church. I was a part of a group, and one of the things that we did in that group is that when there was death within the church, death within our faith community, is that we would always rally around to provide a repast for the families after the funeral, and we would make sure that in the celebration of the life that they were able to be able to have refreshments afterwards, and normally it was after the burial, and we would come. And on this one occasion, I had not been a part of this group for very long. But on this particular occasion, I was, and I was, had been elected to, kind of be a person, kind of the leader within the group, and kind of organizing, doing things. And so we were having this repast, and we had, put all of this food out, and it was there. And as the family came in, as they were going through the line, I began to, I recognized, boy, we're not going to have enough food here for that. And so I had a couple of friends who were in the restaurant business and who were close by, and I called them and I said, look, man, we're going to need a bunch of, chicken and vegetables and stuff, and look, get it up, quick, and, I'll, send somebody by there and pick it up, and, I'll get you paid and all that kind of stuff. And so of course we did that, and came back and then put, all of the, food, the extra food that we had bought. And so the family was, was taken care of, and felt real good about that. And so after the family had left and we were all kind of sitting around, and then it was time for us to begin to clean up and get ready. But all of a sudden, I noticed there was food coming out of different places. There were, coming out of the cabinets, and cakes and stuff started appearing. And I was like, where the hell did this food come from? And they explained to me that, oh, well, this is Miss So-so cake. This is Miss So-and-so's casserole. This is, all this kind of stuff. And it was, this is food that we set aside for us. That we have to take care of ourselves. We've done all this work, but we want to make sure. And we know, some of this food, we didn't know where it came from, who prepared it. This is what we know of, and that we need to make sure that we're taken care of. I thought of that story because that's what's going on in this story. They're listening to Jesus in this. And while they appreciate, that Jesus has some talents because they asked Jesus, what they want to do is that they cannot even see, or to think of the people who critically need Jesus, who might not have any opportunity. They wanted Jesus to take care of themselves and take care of his home folk, take care of them, and if it's some that's left over to go to somebody, but first of all, take care of home. And I just have always, I've thought about that story in the context of this story, is that how it is that Jesus, priority was not with necessarily taking care of the people who expected him to take care of, but to take care of the people who particularly needed him the most. Jesus then, to make his point, then tells them a story and makes reference to two of the great prophets that they all would have known, and that was Elijah and Elisha, and how they had not, that in difficult circumstances, in the case of Elijah in the midst of a drought, or with Elijah with a skin disease, I'm thinking, something like COVID and stuff that's going around, that he takes care of two strangers. They take care of strangers. They take care of Gentiles. They take care of someone else. But they were the ones of whom were in the most critical need. And I see this passage as calling us and challenging us to look and see as a community, who are those who are around us, not those of whom we think we ought to take care of, but those of whom truly need, and how it is that we are witness. The other thing that kind of stood out as I listened to this passage this week is that then after they're going through this, and he kind of tells them, look, I'm not going to be welcome in my hometown and going out. They then decide that they got to get rid of them. And the story, and Luke tells us in this story, and it helps us to know that this story is probably, at this point, is kind of handed down to him, because it says that they're going to take him out to the crest of town, and they're going to throw him off a cliff. Now, anybody that knows about anything about Nazareth knows that there are no cliffs, there are no places that could have happened, and that it is really more of a metaphor. And as I was reading this week, reading it one time this week, I was thinking about, Tom Brady, of how people said back in 2015 he was ready to go off the cliff, and when he left and going off. So it may not have been an actual. It may have been a metaphor for them just to say, look, if you're not going to take care of us, then we've got no use for you. In fact, we are, even to the point that we just need to get rid of you, because it's just going to be more frustrating to us to think that you out helping somebody else when you could be helping us. And that really did resonate with me, because as I was thinking about this and looking, because I like that line in there where it says that while they were arguing about what they were going to do with him, that he passed through the crowd and went on his way. I cannot tell you how much time I have wasted in my life in situations trying to argue with people about doing the right thing and trying to get them to change their minds about certain things, knowing good and well that it wasn't going to happen. That sometimes that we get so caught up in foolishness that sometimes it's just best for us to go ahead and just to move on, because it is clear that by the time that it had gotten to that point, they were spending more time in trying to argue amongst themselves about why they must do something, that they had completely ignored Jesus in the point. I'm sure that they were then, as the discussion got up, that they started bringing up a whole lot of issues, and I have seen that a whole lot of times in the church when discussions and arguments about what we need to do and ministries we have to do, that somebody will bring up something that happened 10 years ago and why they are not going to support certain things, because 10 years ago when I wanted to get green choir collars for the choir robe, you wanted blue, and you got all your people, and we just argue about so much senseless stuff. And in this day and time, I kind of think about, how we are arguing over and spending a lot of time on people of whom are giving bad information around the vaccine. And I was a part of a group the other day of where people were spending a lot of time trying to debate around why the information was wrong and going through. And I just said, this is foolish. I mean, because they're not going to change. And in fact, I don't even know if they believe it as much as they're saying they believe it, but they're just doing it because we live in a time of where we have to be divisive about certain issues. And even if we might agree with it, we might take the other side of it just so that we can be in disagreement with some other people. So those were a couple of things that I just kind of stood out for me, and I'm sure that I'll kind of focus on this week as we just kind of look at Jesus' circumstances and to ask our own selves, where are we spending our energy? And are we utilizing our energy to help those of whom really need help, or whether we're just trying to do some things, simply trying to prove our point, rather than looking and seeing how it is that Jesus is speaking to us and what Jesus is inviting us to be able to do in that moment. So haven't quite zero in on yet, but I am sure that the message will somehow be along that lines. Amen. Oh, okay, Trey. How things going with you, Doc?
Man, pretty good, man. No complaints.
No complaints.
Yeah, man.
It has been it's still an interesting time. I've been listening to people, and I think I got 3 calls this week from people who had gone to be tested. Well, I got 1 call, and Sonia went and got tested, but she was negative. But I got 3 calls from people that went and thought that they were negative, but they went and tested out positive. And
man, let me tell you about this testing.
Yeah.
It's not like they give you anything. You know what I'm saying? They give you a positive or a negative. So I don't think it makes any difference. Like, if you've taken all the precautions that you can, and you feel a little ill, it's like, just go ahead and assume you got COVID.
Right.
Just go and do the best you can at getting healthy. Because it's like you taking time out of your day for them to tell you what you already know, that you feel like shit.
Yeah. Well, but
I don't know, bro.
Well, I mean, I'm leading up to a particular point, and I was kind of that way. But then at the same time that I, was saying to them, because the first question, you have any symptoms? No, I didn't have any symptoms, Oh, well, I kind of felt kind of tired. But no, I was in a meeting and I coughed. And so since I coughed, they went and told me. And so, I'm kind of giving, oh, well, drink plenty of water, take cool, and, you'll be all right. Mm-hmm. But then I saw somebody that, I'm friends with on Facebook. They did the same kind of thing. Oh, well, it's fine. And then on Friday, they went and got tested on Friday. Mm-hmm. And then they were rushed to the hospital on Saturday. And then they were dead on Sunday.
Okay.
And so...
Was it because of the test?
No.
That allowed them to...
No, it wasn't because...
Right.
I mean, it wasn't because... And they ultimately had developed some other things. But I'm just saying it to the standpoint is that when... I don't think we can be so cavalier about it that when the tests tell us that we're positive or we have some signs that we think that we ought to be able to, because what happened with them, as I inquired from somebody else, is that once they were tested and they were positive, they didn't want to go to the hospital because they were afraid they would be in the hospital and nobody could come see them. So they didn't go to the hospital.
Yeah, that would suck too.
And so,
that sucks too. Yeah.
Right, but then they got so sick.
Right.
That they had to go to the hospital, and as as they would say, it was probably, even if they'd have gone in the hospital, it's probably nothing they could have done because the comfort for them, when it's your time kind of thing.
Let me ask you this:
Yeah.
At what point do you feel like going to the hospital is appropriate? You know what I'm saying? Like, I remember you going and being rushed to the hospital twice.
Yeah.
In my life. Like once, you was laid out in the middle of the floor. It's like it wasn't your call to be rushed to the hospital at that time.
Yeah.
And then some kind of sinus issue that was going on with you where you was just, I think you were feeling bad for a few days and then you went to the hospital. But, for men, for black men maybe, right, of my age, it's
right.
At what point do you feel like, all right, let's go to the hospital? Because I mean, I wasn't brought up that way. I don't feel like coming from your loins.
Yeah, I think there are a couple of things, in particular from my own experience, is that I don't want to. For a lot of people, they don't have insurance. And so to go in, that's just crazy. I mean,
that's just crazy.
You will never get away from that. And then even if you have insurance, that kind of risk of going in and just saying, one of the I kind of say this, with going and getting a colonoscopy, is at least tell me you found a polyp or something. I don't want to go and spend $300 or $400, for my portion of it, and then you say, oh, well, you all right, and so, or to go in. It's nothing worse than for them to come in, and you went into emergency room, and they say, oh, go take a couple of aspirin and go back in.
Right.
And so it's got to be, it had to be for me, some pain,
Right.
And the time you're talking about, I had kidney stones, boy, and when that pain, well, you can't move, then you got to go in. But I do think in this day and time is that, a lot of people did not go in thinking they had COVID. Then when they got in, I think it proves the point, is that I think there's a whole lot of people walking around with COVID.
Sure.
And just keeping track of it does more for the statistics of going in and saying,
Right, so the CNN can say Nashville or Tennessee got one more person.
They got 10,000 people, who tested.
For real, for sure.
But at the same time, I don't want to ever be so cavalier or to somebody of whom finds themselves in the point. And that's why I honestly do believe that everybody ought to have a physician. I mean, if I've got some concerns, I'm calling my doctor. My doctor's a friend, and he'll say, come by the office or go to the hospital or, man, this is what's going on, even from the standpoint. So, and to kind of tie this in, to the thing, I've been in the hospital, and I remember one time I, took somebody over to the hospital, and I was there, and there were people that were coming in, and they were getting in and out in about 5 minutes, 10 minutes, going in. And what it was is they were people of whom were homeless and poor and who didn't have anything and were just going in. And for them, they didn't care about tying up the system because they wasn't going to ever pay the bill no way. So
it's like bill me.
Right, go ahead, bill me, and
I've been through this before.
And so it was one person, that was there, and I was kind of like, and the person was sitting, near me, and I finally went over to, to the desk and say, look, y'all need to take care of this person, because I'm sitting there with a mask, and I'm thinking, the way they going through, and they were like, we waiting on him to get a ride to Kentucky. And I was like, ride to Kentucky? He's like, yeah, he comes in here once a week, and it's generally on a Thursday or Friday night, and we'll call, and somebody will come and pick him up, and so he's just here, and it's a warm place. He can get something, and so you see the thing, and so I do think that in this time that we just have to be sensitive to the thing, and but at the same time being responsive to people of whom when we look at them and have I look at
before you start going around and not answering my question. So at any point when you tested positive for COVID and you were aware, did you feel like I may need to go to the hospital?
No. In fact, I never felt like I needed to go to the hospital.
Okay, all right. So let me tell you,
because I've had breathing issues.
Sure, you have.
And so I kind of knew some of the triggers of when I can't do certain things, and so I never had any of those things. My more major concern was, I'm already being punished because I may got to stay away from Mason, and I gotta, I may have been tired but then it was snow on the ground, so I had nowhere to go no way. So, but no, I never felt like I needed to go to the hospital.
Yeah. So, no, I don't think I ever felt like I needed the hospital either. But I don't know what that feels like for those people who have decided that was the choice. And when you said, couldn't nobody come to see me, so I decided not to go, I would think that would be in the forefront of my brain on the decision. Like, if I'm in there coughing and, can't get my breath and, do I never really want to go to the hospital and do all this pandemic stuff, or do I just want to ride it out until I can't ride it no more? And I think,
and I do think a lot of people do that, because that's what happened in this person, They felt ill enough to go and be checked, but they didn't feel quite ill enough to go in until they felt real, real bad, and then they said they had to go in. But I also think that in a lot of cases, it is not that person's decision of whether to go in. Because I think of some of the people of whom have lost loved ones in our community. It was when they thought there was something else other than COVID.
Yeah. Sonya sent me a text message. It was like, Daddy should have came over there and quarantined with y'all because I couldn't sleep. Checking on him, making sure he was breathing. It's like, man, it's real for people that are
right. For people that are that are checking on and you going, and so you want to make the decision. And as I say, for a couple of people that I know that were in the hospital, they didn't know they had COVID till they got to the hospital. They went to the hospital for something else, and saying, I got this, I got that, I can't do this and I can't do that. Because we really don't know just what COVID really is impacting. Until we get, some various symptoms. And one of the persons that I know, has some major health issues anyway. And so in just going in, and they were hesitant about going in because that did mean that for about 5 weeks, they didn't have any contact, with anybody. But at the same time, it might have been, if I was worried, I was concerned that somebody's got to take care of me and that I might end up giving it to them, then, I might have said, okay, well, I need to, I probably need to go on in and getting taken care of. And the fact that I do think that if I were in, I like to think that probably Harvey would come and see me. So there would be somebody. That would be the real fear, to be in and not know anybody.
Yeah.
No familiar face and nobody to tell you, the truth about anything.
Right.
So,
and your cell phone garbage anyway, so it's not.
Oh, yeah.
No, we would have to get you a new cell phone.
Oh, yeah, that would be it.
I can't charge my cell phone. I got to have a specific plug and specific charger and all.
Right, yeah, that would be, on the way, the ambulance would be taking me, I say, look, we got to stop at T-Mobile. Yeah, okay. I want to thank you for tuning in, and as we have talked a little bit in our conversation about things that are going on with COVID, I do want to continue to encourage you to be safe. I'm almost willing to bet that everybody who's listening to this has probably already received their vaccine. Maybe there are some who have not gotten their boosters. Some of you probably are waiting. Okay, well, are they going to come up with a particular booster for this or for that? Just whenever they offer you something, just go get it. I was listening to John Stockton, who was a great point guard, probably in my top 10 of players. Used to be in my top 10 of players. So I was listening to him other day saying, you don't need to go get vaccine and stuff because he's known there's 150 professional basketball players that drop dead. And of course, that we know that's foolishness on that. But I do encourage you to do whatever you need to be safe. I would rather for you to be safe and not need it than to need it. And we are offering up prayers and praying for your healing. And word because you had not received it. So once again, I just want to thank you for spending some time with us and just encourage you just to be safe and be well.